multiple fronts due to a once-in-a-generation pandemic. Even here, we beat the doomsday predictions in spectacular fashion. We fared better than most other regions in terms of infections and deaths. Perhaps this is because of our youthful population, our warm weather, experience of infectious disease management, or simply good leadership. What I know for sure is that our resilience was tested more so than at any moment in our history, and we stayed alive. With some 6 million deaths globally, Africa had 253,000 or so, and Ghana 1,445. Our economies contracted, but we were hit economically. Our economies contracted by 3.2% in 2020, reflecting a weaker external environment and measures to contain the COVID-19 outbreak. The fiscal balance as a proportion of GDP is also estimated to have deteriorated by -3.5% in 2019 to -7.6% in 2020, while the debt to GDP ratio edged up from 60% to 71.1%. At the same time, development gaps widened. According to the UNECA, the annual Sustainable Development Goal financing gap for developing countries has increased by 1.7 trillion. Our infrastructure financing gap also widened to approximately 130 to 170 billion annually. Additionally, Africa now needs roughly 66 billion to meet its health financing needs, 39 billion to improve access to education, and close to 3 trillion in additional resources to finance the implementation of nationally determined contributions and reduce climate vulnerabilities. As the contours of the post-pandemic landscape comes into sharp focus, we begin to see what could likely become a lost decade for the most vulnerable economies, characterized by subdued growth, recurring debt crisis, and instability. The stakes are high, and although our economy started to rebound in 2021, elevated debt levels and limited financing tools constrained further growth. And now, in addition to this, we have to contend with the severe fallout of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Indeed, these are truly epochal times for our people and our continent. Today, 41 African economies are severely exposed to at least one of 3 concurrent crises: rising food and fertilizer prices, rising fuel prices, and tightening financial conditions. Food prices are at least 30–40% higher than this time last year. Crude oil prices have increased by about 60%. Gas and fertilizer prices have more than tripled, and the number of people experiencing hunger has increased by 46 million in Africa. This triple helix conversation is now firmly on creating an Africa on the move. Our friends should lock hands with us to truly unleash our potential. In designing our continent's response strategy, we must build from our innate resilience and strengthen partnership. Africa Development Bank's focus here must therefore be guided by advancing progress across a number of pillars, digitalize our society, realize the potential of raising innovative climate financing, explore possibilities to scale up social protection programs, bring greater transparency to the methodologies of rating agencies, make progress on SDR rechanneling, and use the AFDB as a conduit for deploying SPRs on the continent, and leverage the ADF's balance sheet to raise additional capital for the continent. We must remedy a situation where any financial institution, including the Bretton Woods, has a deeper foothold on our continent than our own Africa Development Bank. Given the current local and global dynamics, it has become imperative that we vigorously mobilize resources through innovative means, including from the digital space. We must simply uncover this potential to recover and build forward better. This bank must be unshackled to raise competitive financing for its members. We must lend support to the proposed reforms in respect of the regulations around ADF funds to enable the bank to leverage these funds to raise more funds and unlend at lower rates to all of our countries. The bank must be unshackled, indeed, to raise competitive financing for its members. It remains puzzling that the ADF is not in a position to come to the international capital markets. We must rethink and address this in the face of the present challenges that confront us. On the ADF's 50th anniversary, our aim must be to raise a further 50 billion within the next 5 years in the capital markets. Such an ambition is bold, courageous, and necessary to signal a new dawn for the bank. As worldwide momentum around climate action accelerates, we need our development institutions to guide a pragmatic transition for Africa that balances our developmental aspirations with realistic net zero targets. We know that although Africa is responsible for under 4% of global emissions, we are disproportionately affected by climate change and the actual opportunity cost of meeting COP26 targets. US $6 billion out of a global total of $30 billion of climate adaptation finance flows to Africa. Also, despite the vast opportunities for green investment, the continent attracts less than 1% of global green bond issuance, estimated at $600 billion. Undoubtedly, undeniably, our bank has a $3 trillion opportunity to co-finance project pipelines, provide concessional resources, and de-risk green transactions. Positioning our bank to crowd in the needed finance for climate must continue to engage our attention, mainly because the prospects of being left with stranded assets in an emerging concern in the African climate change debate. The results associated with AFDB and ADF's operations have changed the lives of millions of Africans. As such, as Africa's financing needs have grown, the resources of our development institutions must grow at a pace commensurate with the needs of the continent. There's a strong development case for a scaled-up AFDB and ADF following current trends. The expansion of quality infrastructure, investments across agriculture, energy, transport, water, and sanitation is crucial to undergird our efforts at moving beyond the pandemic and unfolding food and commodity crisis. Let us find an avenue for SDRs to be channeled to AFDB. Let us leave with a sense of achievement when we finish these meetings. Enlightened self-interest will suggest that we hold in our collective hand the power for a productive or disruptive future in 2050, as by that date, Africa will be a quarter of the world's population and will have 850 million youth. To that end, we've been presented with the opportunity to leverage these annual meetings for purposeful actions that will be unthinkable in times of calm. Romans 13:11, and I quote, "And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we believe." This is the time for us to take action. Crucially, we must also use this forum to bring growing attention to the fact that the current global financial architecture does not provide the requisite benefits needed by low and middle income countries to develop. We have all said so on many fora, but who will do this? And one of the writers of our national anthem, Ephraim Amu, says, "Asemaba hina nobeka, ejuma aba hina nobeye." The talk is going on. Who would really speak? And the work is to be done. Who would do this work? Access to external capital markets is limited and costly. Currently, only 21 African countries have a track record of capital market access. Additionally, African countries with market access pay higher interest rates than their peers with similar or worse economic fundamentals. Estimates of what may be termed the African premium range from 100, an all-in cost of 100 to 600 basis points, even after accounting for economic fundamentals. Although our multilateral and bilateral partners Introduced well-meaning initiatives such as the DSSI and Common Framework, their impact has been limited. Similar concerns stall the implementation of the Common Framework for Debt Treatment. To date, the 3 countries that subscribe to the initiative are yet to receive their full debt relief. The time has come to ensure that comprehensive support is offered to countries facing challenges of debt pressures. We can start by ensuring that the agencies that influence investment decisions leverage methods and processes that ensure capital is directed towards well-appointed growth initiatives in emerging countries such as ours, instead of earning suboptimal returns overseas. Only then can we tackle the inherent bias of African nations viewed as riskier and thus attracting expensive debt. In truth, growth pressures on the continent are not bleak, especially once Africa is not constrained from accessing the requisite capital to succeed. The harsh reality is that so far, what we have seen is fragmentation across climate finance, SDG finance, and COVID-related liquidity support. For instance, 100 billion in SDR rechannelling prospects have not fully materialized, so has a promise of 100 billion annually to support climate change financing for developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, with the wind behind our sail, we must position our Africa Development Bank to be at the center of Africa's recovery. We must lay out a roadmap through these annual meetings that allows us to build back better and effect a tectonic shift in the global financial architecture. As the chair of the G24, I highlighted that a very unsettling picture of Picasso's Guernica in 1937 confronts us if we do not collectively rise to the occasion and confront the exigencies of the moment. What would the painters and the painting look like if we forget our common humanity? Difficult conversations must be had and responsibility must be shared for us to make meaningful progress and realize our development aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, a hugely successful forum lies ahead of us. I remain encouraged by the words of Nelson Mandela. Nothing is impossible. It always seems impossible until it is done. Let us be reminded of our political liberation successes. Let us remember the economic successes until COVID-19 disrupted us. We know that with good leadership, with the anchor of the AFCFTA, and with the anchor of AFDB, we shall succeed. Let us look to the future then, anchored on these 3 pillars. So without taking any more time, let us be bold and courageous, focus on writing a new chapter in the story history of our beautiful continent. Welcome to Accra, Akwaaba. Thank you. God bless Africa. God bless us all.
The bank and the fund must be unshackled to raise competitive finances for Africa. Now is the time for us to take action, not tomorrow. We need to reposition the African Development Bank as the center of Africa's recovery. Adase, Governor, thank you very much. Now we play the opening video.
Climate change is here. Without electricity, the water pumps stop.
En pleine culture, tu perds l'eau, tu n'as plus d'eau, des fois tu perds tout ce que tu avais semé.
The time to adapt is now.
Ni aménagement of the Mkutano. That's a lamp parcel. Sapala, Tunamana, Zero, Yavara, Matomandama.
Today, about 600 million of Africa's poorest are being forced to adapt to climate change without the benefits of any electricity. 900 million lack access to clean cooking facilities. Indoor air pollution caused by biomass fuel use leads to 600,000 deaths per year and to deforestation. Insufficient electricity impedes job creation, industrialization, and investment. Welcome to the 2022 African Development Bank's annual meetings here in Accra, Ghana. Today, we come together to address the twin challenges of achieving climate resilience and a just energy transition for Africa. How do we build resilience and help countries achieve an equitable transition to cleaner energy?
Africa faces a huge challenge with energy transition. And with climate change, Africa cannot afford to be poor in an environmentally sustainable manner.
The African Development Bank and the Global Center on Adaptation have launched the African Adaptation Acceleration Program with the goal of mobilizing $25 billion to find solutions to accelerate, innovate, and scale adaptation actions in Africa. One of its flagship programs is the Empowering Youth for Entrepreneurship and Job Creation in Climate Adaptation and Resilience. Green energy will open job opportunities for Africa's youth.
Na Cabo Eólica, iniciei como gestor de projeto. Atualmente sou o diretor técnico.
The African Development Bank is investing heavily in renewable energy. This includes the Ouarzazate solar power plant in Morocco, the world's largest concentrated solar power system, the 3,000 megawatt Benban solar project in Egypt, and the $20 billion Desert to Power initiative to develop 10,000 megawatts of solar power for the Sahel region that will provide clean energy for 250 million people. To expand wind energy, the bank is investing in the Lake Turkana Energy Project, the largest wind farm in Africa. The Great Green Wall Project, an 8,000-kilometer ribbon of green stretching across the Sahel, will be built with $6.5 billion committed. Natural gas is still necessary for Africa's development. At the annual Africa Investment Forum, investors committed $24 billion for a liquefied natural gas project that will make Mozambique the third largest LNG producer in the world. All of these projects are designed to make Africa more resilient. To truly succeed, women's business potential must be unleashed. The bank's affirmative finance action for women in Africa is mobilizing $5 billion for women businesses. Feeding Africa remains a top priority. The Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation Program has provided drought-tolerant seeds and training for 12 million farmers across Africa.
We actually started at 31 hectares in 2018. We graduated to about 252 hectares for both maize and soya beans. From there, we moved progressively to about 450 hectares for the production of still both maize and soya.
As we face the impacts of a changing climate, the African Development Bank is committed to innovative thinking and transformative investments. Together, we can explore ways and find solutions to create a bright future for all Africans.
Thank you very much for that video. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, to deliver his keynote speech.
Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, and our host. Thank you very much, sir. Your Excellency, my dear sister, Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of Tanzania, and one of the two female presidents we have in Africa. When women win, Africa wins. Your Excellency, Philippe Nyusi, President of Mozambique. Your Excellency, Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros, who will be joining us shortly by video. Your Excellency, Temoko Melie Kone, the Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, and congratulations, sir, on your being Vice President for Cote d'Ivoire. Your Excellency, Edouard Ingirente, the Prime Minister of Rwanda. Your Excellency, my sister, Monique Nzanza-Bangamwa, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. A special welcome to Dr. Kwame Fodwa, former President of the African Development Bank Group. Let me tell you one thing about Dr. Fodwa. At his age, regardless of his health challenges, he has never missed a single meeting of the African Development Bank Group since I've been president. Thank you very much, sir, for all that you have done for the African Development Bank. We will never forget you. Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, the Chairperson of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank Group, Honorable Ministers, Governors of the African Development Bank Group, Excellencies, Heads of Regional Economic Communities, Ambassadors, Heads of Diplomatic Missions, my Board of Directors, Management and Staff of the African Development Bank Group, eminent members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course, my darling and beautiful wife, Grace. I wish to thank you, Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, for hosting these annual meetings of the African Development Bank Group in this beautiful city of Accra. I know that you launched the Year of Return for people of African origin to return to Ghana, which has been quite successful. Well, today, Mr. President, you have so many participants from across Africa, from across the world for these annual meetings. I hope many of them stay and now return home because of the excellent hospitality of the government and the people of Ghana. To them, I say, Akwaba, welcome. Welcome to the gathering of the friends of Africa, the partners of Africa. For this place today is filled with those who have faith in and hope in Africa. Yet, there are millions of Africans who we serve every day who are not here. Yet, we must see them. Yet, we must hear their voices. Yet, we must feel their needs in all that we do. For we do not represent ourselves. We represent them. Their lives are affected every day by climate change, majority of them women. Many of their lives are affected by lack of electricity, from a kid struggling to read with candles or lanterns, or the occasional street light in their neighborhoods, to a mother who straps her baby on her back, using fuel wood and charcoal to cook, yet exposing herself and her child to the effects of fumes that endanger their lives. So, the theme of our annual meetings, achieving climate resilience and a just energy transition, is all about people. Africa is the least emitter of carbon emissions in the world, accounting for only 4% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Yet, the continent suffers disproportionately from the negative impacts of climate change, including increased frequency and intensity of droughts, cyclones, floods, compounded by desertification. Climate change is simply short-changing African economies. Africa suffers $7 to $15 billion per year in losses to climate change, which are projected to rise to $40 billion per year by 2030. Africa has no choice but to adapt to climate change that it did not cause. To support the continent in doing so, the African Development Bank has doubled its financing for climate to $25 billion by 2025. Without any doubt, the African Development Bank is the leader on climate adaptation in Africa and globally. The share of our climate finance dedicated to adaptation is 67%, the highest of all multilateral development banks, and I was particularly excited when UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon singled out the bank in the UN General Assembly last year, that the bank is leading and others should follow. Your Excellencies, the bank and the Global Center on Adaptation, we are implementing what we call the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, or AAAP, with the goal of mobilizing $25 billion in climate adaptation financing for Africa. The bank is also supporting countries to insure themselves against extreme weather events through its Africa Disaster Risk Insurance Facility. Today, the facility is helping 9 countries to pay for insurance premiums to protect themselves and their populations from the effects of climate change. In Madagascar, our support of $4 million to pay for the full insurance of the country allowed it to get $12 million in payouts to compensate over 600,000 farmers when Cyclone Batsirai hit the country. Your Excellencies, we need more financing to ensure many more low-income countries against these extreme weather events. The bank is leading on securing the food supplies, Your Excellency, for Africa in the face of climate change. 6 years ago, with the approval of our board of directors, I launched the Feed Africa strategy of the bank. Our goal was to deliver climate-resilient agricultural technologies to farmers and to feed Africa. We are achieving incredible success. Our Feed Africa work has already benefited over 76 million farmers with access to improved agricultural technologies across Africa. Our flagship program, which we call Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or in abbreviation TAAT or TAAT, has delivered climate smart seeds to 12 million farmers in 27 countries in just 2 years. We are helping farmers to beat climate change. TAAT delivered water-efficient maize to 5.6 million households in East Africa, an area hit by severe droughts 3 years ago. The drought was severe, but farmers secured their food supply with the water-efficient maize varieties. In Sudan, TAAT financed the provision of 65,000 tons of heat-tolerant wheat varieties. That is seeds enough to fill 665 Airbus 380 aircrafts. If you take an Airbus 380 aircraft, the people in it, the cargo, and the fuel is 98.4 metric tons. So when I tell you 65,000 metric tons, what I'm telling you is think about 665 A380 Airbuses packed on a landing strip. That's what I'm talking about. Sudanese farmers grew the varieties on 187,000 hectares. In just 2 years, Sudan reduced its wheat import by 50%. We did the same in Ethiopia. TAAT financed the provision of 45,000 tons of seeds of heat-tolerant wheat varieties to farmers in Ethiopia. The farmers initially started with 5,000 hectares of these heat-tolerant wheat varieties in 2018. They expanded to 167,000 hectares 2 years later. And by the end of this year, they have expanded it to 400,000 hectares. I was in Ethiopia just last week, and I was very honored to be conferred with a honorary doctorate by the Addis Ababa University. And I was having lunch with His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia. As I explained to him the 400,000, I was so excited about it. He leaned forward intently towards me. And I was wondering, what is it, why was it leaning forward intently towards me? He said, Akin, I was just waiting for you to stop because I wanted to tell you the following. And I quote him. Actually, Ethiopia's wheat production is now on 650,000 hectares. We harvested 2.6 million metric tons of wheat. Ethiopia did not import wheat this year. Next year, we will cultivate 2 million hectares on the wheat. And he concluded, we expect to export at least 1.5 to 2 million metric tons of wheat to Kenya and Djibouti. Incredible, simply incredible. Your Excellencies, we will not be talking about a looming food crisis in Africa if Russia did not invade Ukraine. To tackle the looming food crisis in Africa from Russia's war in Ukraine, the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission developed an Africa Emergency Food Production Plan. The $1.5 billion plan will be used to support African countries to produce food rapidly. The plan will produce 38 million metric tons of food. That will be 11 million metric tons of wheat. That will be 18 million metric tons of maize, 6 million metric tons of rice, and 2.5 million metric tons of soybeans. The total value of the additional production will be 12 billion US dollars. So you can see with our investment of $1.5 billion to deliver $12 billion of food for the continent, that is a leveraging factor of 8 times. That's what we are as African Development Bank, We're a fantastic leveraging machine for money. The bank will deliver climate-resilient agricultural technologies at scale for 20 million farmers. I am delighted that my board of directors at the African Development Bank approved the 1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Facility last Friday, May 20, 2022. I want my board of directors to stand. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do every single day. This approval, which is landmark, follows a global convening by the bank that I helped to chair in partnership with the African Union Commission of the African Ministers of Finance, Ministers of the Economy, Ministers of Agriculture, African Development Finance Institution, United Nations agencies, developed countries from around the world, and of course attended by my dear sister, Managing Director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, who gave a fantastic support behind us. We all agreed it is time to support Africa to produce its food. It is time to have food sovereignty in Africa. Food aid cannot feed Africa. Africa does not need bowls in hand. Africa needs seeds in the ground and mechanical harvesters to harvest bountiful food produced locally. Africa, Your Excellencies, must feed itself with pride. There is no dignity in begging for food. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank is also spearheading just energy transition for Africa. Since 2009, the bank has not funded any new coal projects. Not funding coal has now been formalized as a policy with our new energy policy approved by our board of directors. Africa has perhaps the world's largest potentials for renewable energy sources, especially for solar, for hydro, geothermal, and wind. The African Development Bank is implementing a $20 billion desert-to-power initiative in the Sahel to build 10,000 megawatts of solar power generation. These will provide electricity via solar for 250 million people and turn the Sahel into the largest zone for solar in the world. The bank plans to establish the Africa Just Energy Transition Facility, which will be used to support African countries to transition from heavy fuel oil and coal power plants to renewable energy, base load power systems. The bank is currently working with the government of South Africa in support of its efforts for just energy transition, for example. We are also working closely with the G7 countries to leverage their $8.5 billion financing promise for South Africa. Our approach at the African Development Bank will allow South Africa to raise $27 billion on the capital markets in support of its just energy transitions. And let me be clear, it will be able to do so without debt. As we look to energy transition, we must ensure three imperatives. First, we must ensure access and affordability to electricity. Second, there must be security of supply of energy. And third, gas must remain a critical part of the energy mix for Africa. Let me just be clear. Even if sub-Saharan Africa triples the use of gas for energy, you know how much it will have contributed in terms of global carbon emissions, less than 0.67%. So we got to be realistic, pragmatic, for Africa will not be poor in an environmentally sustainable manner. We have to industrialize and create jobs. But we're doing so in a way that is green. Progress will depend on developed economies fulfilling their commitment to provide at least $100 billion in climate finance annually to developing countries. I thank the government of Ghana for its clear statement with regard to the issue of just energy transition and climate change. But I also now, as we now look from here to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, I want to thank His Excellency President El-Sisi, who will be hosting us in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you to the UK government for a fantastic COP26 that we had in Glasgow. Now, as we move from Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh, let's turn words into action. Let's turn ambition into real money that will help developing countries. Africa can, Your Excellencies, accelerate its development and cope with other challenges such as climate change, debt, insecurity, and the effects of Russia's war in Ukraine on their economies if we better leverage the special drawing rights, the SDRs of the International Monetary Fund. And I want to publicly give a shout out to my two people that I really think have done incredibly well in making that happen, to all of countries around the world, by Secretary Yellen of the US Treasury, who said we got to think big, and of course my sister, Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF. Africa needs to have a reallocation of $100 billion from developed economies, as agreed to by the African heads of state, and also at the Conference on Financing African Economies, hosted by President Emmanuel Macron of France. The African Union has called for a reallocation of the SDRs to Africa, with a portion of it going through the African Development Bank. We should use the SDRs in more pragmatic ways to support economies. Providing SDRs also through the multilateral development banks has several benefits. First, multilateral development banks can leverage the SDRs. At the African Development Bank, we can leverage the SDRs by a factor of 4 times. Second, the SDRs can be absorbed by the bank as equity, which will expand our lending capacity to countries. And third, the SDRs that's leveraged will be used to provide additional capital and financing to the development banks all across Africa as part of the financing in common that we are implementing together with the government of France. The SDRs can also be provided as concessional loans to the African Development Fund. Providing SDRs also to the multilateral development banks will be game changers for accelerated development of our economies in Africa. Your Excellencies, perhaps the SDRs could be given a different name, probably called Supporting Development Revitalization. That will be SDR. That way people on the streets will feel the effects of SDRs on their lives. As our esteemed shareholders, I would like to ask for your strong support for these efforts. Your Excellencies, dear governors, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, nowhere is the need for additional greater financing more than the low-income countries and fragile states that rely on the African Development Fund. This year, the African Development Fund, the concessional lending institution of the African Development Bank, will turn 50 years. In 50 years, it has provided $45 billion in support of the countries that are here. I know we have an event on Thursday to celebrate the African Development Fund. But because it's a public event, I would like representatives of all the ADF countries, state participants, to rise. The countries that are part of ADF, we want to see you please rise. Thank you very much, because without them there would not have been that $45 billion. Thank you to you and your governments. Your Excellencies, you can see African Development Bank Group at work right here in Ghana. Delegates, as you arrived in Accra, you came through the beautiful Kotoka International Airport. It was financed by the African Development Bank. As you drive right through Accra, you will ride over the 4-tier Pokwase Road interchange, a masterpiece of quality infrastructure, the first of such in West Africa, and the second of such in the whole of Africa. It was financed by the African Development Fund. And Ghana used the funds very, very well. Money that was meant to do a 3-tier interchange was stretched and used to do a 4-tier interchange. Now that's what we do. At the African Development Bank, we deliver great value for money. Mr. President, I'm so proud of you and I'm so proud of your government. Please give it up to them. And the minister. Please stand up. When I came, I told the minister, what is that, your last name that say it's twins? Atta? He said his name is called Atta. Mr. President, I said maybe you should be appointing so many Attas into your government, because Atta means twins, which means we get 2 for the value of 1. Thank you very, very much. I wish to express my great appreciation to each ADF donor country. You have stayed with the fund. You have supported the fund. And your countries have been partners in a journey of hope of the countries that are supported by the African Development Fund. To give greater hope, to cope with increasing challenges, the ADF countries need greater resources. One way to achieve this is to allow the African Development Fund to use its accumulated equity of $25 billion to leverage $33 billion from the capital markets. Then the fund will be able to deliver more. The fund will provide greater leverage for donor contributions, a greater value for money for taxpayers from all of the donor countries. The fund will become more sustainable as it will generate more income. The fund will reduce debt of countries as it will deliver much lower concessional lending rates compared to the very high rates these countries get on the global capital markets. Then together, we will build a more equitable growth and development from the middle-income countries to the low-income countries and to the fragile states. No development of any country will be left behind. Your Excellencies, as I close, thank you for giving me a great responsibility as Africa. And I thank all of our 81 shareholder countries for giving me a great responsibility. In 2015, when I was elected, I was very clear. The job being the president of the African Development Bank is not a job for me. I am on a mission of service. When you all generously re-elected me in 2020, I said the same thing. I am on a mission. I don't have a job. My life is only useful to the extent to which it is used to improve the lives of people, and no greater responsibility for me as an African can be greater and placed on my shoulders than to fast-track the development of the continent of my birth. I am proud and humbled to be the president of the African Development Bank. Our boards are working, and they are effective and rigorous in carrying out their oversight functions. Our management is working. Our governance, control, and oversight systems are working. Our risk management systems are working. We are a very well-run, a very well-managed bank. We are a AAA rated financial institution, the only one in Africa. We have consistently maintained our stellar AAA ratings by all major credit rating agencies, even during the worst period of COVID-19 pandemic, thanks to your excellent support as shareholders. Your Excellencies, my boards of directors, my boards of governors, shareholders, we will tell our own stories throughout these annual meetings, great stories of our relentless work and efforts. Boards of governors, boards of directors, management, and staff toiling day and night to make the continent and our bank better. But we will not be defined by concocted, outlandish, fabricated, tabloid, horror movie made-up stories which some disgruntled people seek to paint about us, which are false, biased, ill-motivated, and completely baseless. Lies and orchestrated misinformation cannot be legitimized by the economist. We will tell our own story, not a story that some write about us, and our story is a great story. The African Development Bank was ranked by Global Finance as the best multilateral financial institution in the world in 2021. The African Development Fund was ranked by the Washington-based Center for Global Development as the second best concessional financing institution in the world in terms of development effectiveness. I am not in competition with anyone or any institution, but just to say, we are also ahead of IDA of the World Bank. And all 28 concessional financing institutions in all OECD countries. We will continue with humility to serve and to strive to make Africa proud. With our board of governors, our boards of directors, our senior management and staff, and our 81 incredible shareholder countries, we will build a much stronger Africa, a climate-resilient Africa, an Africa with energy security for all, an Africa that feeds itself and becomes a solution for global food crisis, an economically resilient Africa, an Africa well on its way to achieving Agenda 2063 of the African Union, the Africa we want, the Africa which, like a lighthouse, will shine in the darkest of nights, the Africa we all are proud to call home. Thank you all very much.
There you have heard it from Africa's optimist-in-chief, and Africa's global development evangelist. Thank you, Mr. President, for your moving speech. Maybe we will have the supporting development revitalization as the new name of the SDR. And hopefully, all those responsible will see the vision in that renaming. Thank you, Mr. President, for your wonderful speech. May I invite now Her Excellency, Dr. Monique Nsanzabaganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver a statement representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Madam.
Your Excellency, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, and our African Union champion for gender and for champion for African Union financial institutions. Your Excellency, Philip Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique, and our African Union champion for climate disaster risk management. Your Excellency, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, President Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros. Your Excellency, Tiemoko Meliet Kone, Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, here representing President Alassane Ouattara. Right Honorable Prime Minister Edouard Ngirente, representing President Paul Kagame of the Republic of Rwanda. Your Excellency, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank Group, and my dear brother. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and an honor to add my voice on behalf of the African Union Commission to this important conversation, which takes place in an international context plagued by multiple security, health, and environment challenges. And here I bring to you greetings from the Chairperson, Musa Faki Mahamat, who could not be here today due to ongoing extraordinary summits of the African Union currently taking place in Malabo. Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, thank you to you and the people of the Republic of Ghana for the wonderful welcome and warm hospitality to ensure that these annual meetings of the AFDB are a success. And my sincere thanks also go to my dear brother, Dr. President Adesina, for the excellent coordination of what we expect will be robust discussions of the future of our beloved continent and for the just delivered moving speech. Before the surge of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, our continent's economic prospects, drawn from our latest Africa's Development Dynamics report, were on a positive track, recovering from COVID-19 devastating socio-economic shocks, with an expected 3.9% economic growth in 2022, however 1 percentage point lower than the global average of 4.9. It is now anticipated that macroeconomic fundamentals of our economies will further weaken, that more Africans will slide back into extreme poverty, and that gains we had made on the Sustainable Development Goals will further erode. Surely, Aspiration 6 of the African Union Agenda 2063, which speaks about an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children, is threatened. To combat this, prioritization of critical sectors such as agriculture, agro-industry, and services, to shifting from heavy reliance on exports of non-transformed commodities and imports of manufactured goods to a real industrial transformation process are needed. Producing food, medicines, and all the necessary products imported yearly will also allow us to make the most of the $110 billion in imports of food stuff, and also $16 billion in imports of pharmaceutical products. Expanding access to better water and sanitation will go a long way in sustaining health and nutrition, thereby improving the quality of life of the people of Africa and their resilience to the growing disruption of climate change. Furthermore, strengthening the links between debt financing and growth returns for debt sustainability is of paramount importance. Debt should be used for financing the most productive projects that generate sufficient growth to pay for the debt in future. Your Excellencies, development finance is heavily constrained just when it is needed the most. And this is where facilities such as the African Development Fund are key. During the African Union Assembly held this February, our African heads of state and government, in their decision 817, called for, and I quote, a substantial 16th replenishment of the African Development Fund to enable it to meet the growing needs of the continent. And in this same decision, their Excellencies also called for, and I quote again, amendment of the agreement establishing the African Development Fund to enable it to seek resources in the financial market for the benefit of fragile African countries and states in transition, end of quote. Again, our F-15 Ministers of Finance, during the World Bank IMF spring meetings last month, re-emphasized this point in their communique, stating, and I quote, that they call for a substantial and transformative 16th ADF replenishment, and for the ADF to be allowed to go to the market to leverage its quality and raise additional resources to offer at affordable rates to Africa's low-income countries, in line with the decision of the African Union heads of state and government adopted in February 2022, end of quote. Surely ADF has accomplished a lot, and Africa needs it to do more, faster, and smarter. It has all the backing from the African leadership, who also commended for its ranking among global top 2 international development institutions for its quality. This replenishment would be timely, as African Union and the African Development Bank are working to kickstart support to our agricultural sectors. And here, I must congratulate my brother, Dr. Adesina, and your team for the initiative and the recently held joint meeting of African Ministers of Agriculture and Ministers of Finance on the African Emergency Food Production Facility. We look forward to a fruitful harvest in the future as the African Union and the African Development Bank work hand in hand to support our farming communities. Your Excellencies, I wish you best as you continue to deliberate on the most optimal path forward for our continent. A peaceful, united, and prosperous Africa, which effectively plays its role in the political, security, and economic world order, constitutes an asset for humanity. I thank you for listening to me.
Well, don't be surprised that I'm using this to clean the microphone. I want to thank the health services of Ghana for sensitizing us on COVID and carrying out daily tests, and also want to thank Africa CDC for supporting the COVID protocols. Thank you very much for your work. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll now call on the police band for an interlude of music before His Excellency comes on stage. The police band. Thank you, Police Band, for such a wonderful rendition. And by the way, Madam Deputy Chairperson, thank you for your excellent speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor and privilege to invite His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, to deliver his opening address.
Your Excellencies, the Presidents of the Republics of Mozambique and Tanzania, Your Excellencies, the Vice President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, and the Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of Rwanda, Deputy Chair of the AU Commission, the Ghanaian Minister for Finance, Ministers and Deputy Ministers of State from Ghana and other countries, the Governor and Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Chairperson and members of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank Group, President of the African Development Bank Group, the veteran former President of the African Development Bank Group, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, delegates, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Ghana and to the 57th African Development Bank and 48th African Development Fund Annual General Meetings. As we say in Ghana, and you've heard it already, Akwaba. You're amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality. I hope by the end of your visit that you will agree with this claim. I'm particularly happy that I've been able to come to the opening ceremony of these meetings with my good friend, the highly respected progressive President of the Republic of Mozambique, His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, whose state visit to Ghana has coincided with these meetings. It is good to see, too, the first female President of the Republic of Tanzania, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, and other African leaders from Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, and the Central African Republic also present to lend their support to the work of the bank. They and all of you are very welcome to your second home of Ghana. I believe that the choice of Ghana to host the meetings has everything to do with the special place she holds as a beacon of stable democratic governance in Africa, as well as the proverbial warm hospitality of the Ghanaian people. Indeed, these meetings, being held at a critical period in history, when Africa, like the rest of the world, is dealing with the twin effects of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, could not find a better venue than our vibrant capital city of Accra. I congratulate the African Development Fund, ADF, the concessional lending arm of the African Development Bank, on the celebration of its Golden Jubilee. To invest some $9 million, United States dollars, over the last 5 years, up from an initial $327 million in 1976, is nothing short of exemplary. Congratulations are very much in order. Permit me also to commend the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, for his extraordinary vision, passion, and leadership. The African Development Bank is now a globally reputable bank, maintaining, even in difficult times, its stellar AAA ratings, the only African financial institution with AAA global credit ratings. The African Development Bank was ranked by the prestigious Global Finance magazine as the best multilateral financial institution in the world in 2021. It is equally impressive that the African Development Fund was also ranked by the Center for Global Development in the US as the second best in the world amongst all concessional financing institutions, even ahead of the World Bank IDA and all the developed countries' 28 concessional financing institutions of the OECD countries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second consecutive year I'm addressing the bank's annual meetings. I had the honor of doing so last year, albeit virtually. Our meetings today, which are being held in person here in Accra, represent a great relief following 2 years of unprecedented disruptions caused by COVID-19. In my address last year, I challenged us to prioritize 5 main issues. 1, work towards a debt action plan. 2, collaborate and work with the World Bank and the IMF on the debt service suspension initiative and the G20 common framework. 3, explore options for the strategic use of the special drawing rights SDRs to support Africa through the AFDB. 4, work with IFAD and other global institutions to promote the establishment of food security facility. And 5, promote the African financial stability mechanism for greater financial market stability for Africa. As we speak, the case for adhering immediately to these suggestions is even more compelling. We're now confronted with the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which are compounding the emerging socio-economic vulnerabilities which have been heightened by COVID-19. Since February, prices of staple food commodities have surged dramatically. Africa faces a fertilizer shortage of some 2 million metric tons this year, estimated at $2 billion United States dollars, according to the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, potentially creating a productivity deficit of some 20 to 50% in agriculture. Rising food prices disproportionately affect African families, as food consumes some 40% of household incomes, compared to less than 20% in the advanced economies. Energy markets have been significantly volatile, with dire consequences for households and public finances. According to the IMF, a $5 per barrel increase in oil prices reduces global output by around 0.25%. But for non-oil exporting economies in Africa, that figure increases to 0.6%. As a result, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has cut global growth prospects by 1%, and the World Economic Outlook, April 2022, predicts global growth will slow from 6.1% in 2021 to 3.6% in 2022, 0.8 percentage points lower than projected in January 2022. Amidst economic slowdown and rising cost of fuel and food, the cost of living is increasing. The immediate economic consequences, whether in the form of rising inflation, lower growth, increased inequality, and greater financial instability, are likely to permeate deeper as they coincide with weakened economic positions due to the pandemic and pre-existing and now elevated debt challenges. The debt challenges are compounding for us in Africa. In pursuit of policy autonomy, in the age of choice for economic transformation, our debt profile has changed markedly. According to UNECA, the debt to GDP ratio rose from 60% to an estimated 70.1% between 2019 and 2020, largely because of the COVID pandemic. 18 African economies have faced credit downgrades, even when all economies were suffering from fallouts from the pandemic last year. Amidst these challenges, we must be aware of our vulnerability to the monetary policy stance of the U.S. Federal Reserve and the risk of so-called taper tantrums as investors may exit our markets, further exacerbating the increasing cost of borrowing. At this moment, support for non-IMF program countries to alleviate the debt burden is limited. The initial facility designed to offer respite to economies with elevated debt challenges, the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI, has expired since December 2021. Beyond the DSSI, the G20 Common Framework promised a comprehensive solution to the debt issue. To date, the few countries that took on the associated risk by applying have yet to receive the much-needed relief. We look forward to how the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, RST, which requires that countries be in an IMF program, will effectively serve the needs of our countries. In these trying times, the IMF 650 billion special drawing rights, approved in August 2021, was meant to be of significant relief. However, based on the allocation principles, economies on this continent got some 33 billion United States dollars, about 5%. Moreover, the promise to reallocate some 100 billion United States dollars of the SDR allocations to our economies, which was agreed to at the Paris Summit in 2019, has so far yielded about 36 billion United States dollars in pledges as of April 2022. The strategic decision to make the AFDB the delivery vehicle for these SDRs must be pursued and achieved. Leveraging the SDRs 4 times as AFDB does will significantly boost resources for Africa's transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the combined effects of the debt situation, rising interest rates, and rising cost of living are resulting in severe macroeconomic and financial instability. What is clear is that the resulting damage cannot be cured so easily with the limited fiscal tools at our disposal and national policy adjustments. Therefore, I reiterate my call for an elevated role for Africa's premier bank, the AFDB. Only at this time, I respectfully ask for a sense of urgency due to our mutual enlightened awareness. As a AAA-rated financial institution with an active portfolio of some 61 billion United States dollars in more than 142,000 locations, the AFDB is in the position to drive sustained transformation in Africa. It is in this spirit that I'm happy to learn that the AFDB board has approved funding for the 1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Plan to support countries to produce food rapidly while delivering climate-resilient agricultural technologies to 20 million farmers and thus leveraging this facility over 8 times. I'm also encouraged to hear that the right noises are being made towards establishing an African financial stability mechanism to protect our economies from future shocks. The irony that we have a history riddled with economic shocks, but are the only continent in the world without financial buffers, has to be urgently remedied. I'm persuaded that the African financial stability mechanism will provide such protective cover for our economies, thus enabling us to counter effects of future pandemics, amongst others. The confluence of rising challenges and expectations require that together we act with sustained conviction. Our support will be critical to building the Africa we want, as espoused by AU Agenda 2063 from today. In addition to the pressing food, fuel, and fiscal challenges, we still have to ensure that, 1, the remaining 85% of the continent's population are vaccinated against COVID-19. 2, the remaining 60% of health facilities on the continent are connected to a reliable source of electricity. 3, the teeming youth, who are over 60% of our population, are better educated and equipped for the job market, i.e., to become a digitally enabled entrepreneurial generation. 4, the African Continental Free Trade Area transforms Africa with a combined GDP of 3.3 trillion United States dollars. 5, the fiscal and digital infrastructural deficits are addressed. And 6, the unrelenting insecurity and violence, creating about 2.5 million internally displaced people in the Sahel and elsewhere, are permanently addressed. The stakes could not be higher and clearer. To move towards resolving these, we must support the bank to do what a bank does, to mobilize and invest funds. We must activate a process that moves this bank from the corridors of billions to trillions, given the scale of the challenges on this continent. Ultimately, the AFDB must become the dominant financing institution for African transformation in the medium term. This means we must bridge and overhaul the financing gap that exists with other complementary institutions. For instance, the financing gap between the IDA, the concessionary arm of the World Bank in Africa, and ADF now stands at almost 5-fold. That is 15 billion United States dollars compared to the ADF's 3 billion United States dollars per year. It is now time to A, ease the regulations that shackles the bank from optimizing its resources. Amending the articles that precludes the ADF from entering the market to leverage its resources must be first-order priority. In July last year, the IDA of World Bank, the equivalent of ADF, priced a 10-year sustainable development bond that raised 2 billion euros. Subsequently, IDA's funding program expanded from US 5 billion United States dollars in 2020 to 10 billion United States dollars in 2021. Such is the demonstrated power of the market beckoning the ADF. With an ADF equity of 26 billion United States dollars, the prospects could be an additional 8 to 10 billion United States dollars, which could drive sustained transformation, especially for both fragile and states in transition on this continent. B, consider carefully consolidating the balance sheets of both the ADB and ADF to enable raise more resources. There are financial efficiency, policy, and administrative gains inherent to having a single entity with a consolidated balance sheet and harmonized fundraising and governance processes. Overlapping clients and majority of our countries requiring concessional access would enable this consolidation to be beneficial. C, sustained efforts to leverage private investments into Africa. The OECD suggests that the 2.5 trillion United States dollars financing gap for the SDGs could balloon to 4.2 trillion United States dollars. It points out that this gap could be filled by realigning just 1.1% of the 379 trillion United States dollars in global financial assets under management. AFDB must lead in crowding in these resources. And D, demonstrate foremost interest in the proposal by the AU to explore the issuance of security indexed investment bonds to raise funds to address the root causes of increasing insecurity and poverty. With increased financial resources, the bank could recapitalize key African financial institutions such as the regional development banks, Afro-Exim Bank, Africa Guarantee Fund, Africa Reinsurance Company, and Africa 50. This will harness the collective institutional strengths of Africa for sustained transformation and will thus avoid the situation whereby, for example, the IMF, as of the end of 2021, was able to lend 41 billion United States dollars to Argentina with a population of 45 million people, compared to 34 billion United States dollars for the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, with a population of 1.14 billion people. Empowering these African institutions and engaging communities will be vital to addressing the socio-ecological challenge of our time, climate change. Beyond pursuing ecological restoration, the AFDB should foster a culture of proactive and risk-based approaches, away from current reactive and crisis-based practices. This should involve effective coordination, communication, and cooperation, driven by adequate finance and political will. And as the AU champion for financial institutions in Africa, I pledge my support in this regard. Given our peculiar energy challenges, the bank should engage actively the discourse on shifting to a more sustainable economic model without making African communities and nations worse off. The cost of climate to our common humanity keeps increasing, with our continent bearing a disproportionate burden, though we have caused the least emissions of 3.8%, with the Western nations being responsible for 76%. Yet, only 6 billion United States dollars out of the worldwide total of 30 billion United States dollars of climate adaptation finance flows to Africa, even though the United Nations Environment Program has projected that between 75 million and 250 million people would be affected by climate-induced water stress. Not to mention, financing COP26 compliance could potentially strand Africa's natural resources, including natural gas. How do we develop under such unfair circumstances? The bank must empower Africa to seek justice in the journey to clean energy in a manner that optimizes the exploitation of our abundant natural resources. The design and focus of a just energy transition facility are timely, as they offer material support for powering and lighting up Africa and still meet the targets of climate. We must light up and power Africa to enable her feed herself, integrate, and industrialize. We must ensure that our prioritized climate actions are consistent with our current challenges and aspirations as a continent. This will be a demonstration of the theme chosen for these annual meetings. We must avoid our natural resources being stranded in the upcoming negotiations in Egypt at COP27. The stronger bonds between economy, ecology, and conflicts demand that a bold and holistic approach be taken. It is in that light that I consider the theme of these annual meetings both timely and appropriate. At the end of these meetings, Africa expects a framework that reconciles people and planet for peace. We cannot fail the people and the planet. Both must win. But for this to happen, Africa must win. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to move towards an economic model which serves our interests, not others. Profits from our resources have benefited foreign creditors for far too long, while we suffer abusive borrowing costs on the international capital markets. There is no basis for our economies being saddled with the so-called African risk premium, which translates into higher spreads than for our European and American counterparts, particularly when our resources were the catalyst for the economic advancement of Western nations. It is time we work to address and remove the structural barriers to our development. And we must also deal with tax dodging and illegitimate commercial transactions by multinationals, which account for 60% of the $88 billion United States dollars of illicit financial outflows from the continent annually, and other relationships which inhibit our development. I am comforted by the array of expertise available to us. Now more than ever, it has become urgent to take the necessary steps to transition us towards become a resilient continent. Africa must exploit her productive capacities collectively and build the capacity of her continental development banks in order to realize the Africa we want and an Africa beyond aid. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor to declare the annual general meetings of the African Development Bank Group here in Accra duly open. I wish you a very fruitful meeting, and may God bless the African Development Bank Group, Mother Africa, and us all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, for such a wonderful speech. And of course, we know you as the advocate for Africa without aid. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with that inspiring address from His Excellency, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony. We will now transition to the presidential dialogue, which will now be just one panel and not two, because time is fast spent. Before we go to the panel, we ask you to remain seated for the heads of states to reconvene, but for now, they will retire to the VIP room in preparation for the panel. However, let's make the following announcements. There will be a family photo after the presidential dialogue for the following personalities: Excellencies, heads of state and government, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, honorable governors of the bank group, and special guests. And then the photo will be followed by a high-level luncheon by invitation at the small arena. We're hoping to get this accomplished to be able to meet the time for the remaining programs of the annual meetings. I now invite His Excellencies, the Excellencies, to please transition to the VIP room while we prepare to move into. Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Hapo nyuma kabla ya mradi huu hali kidogo ilikuwa ngumu hasa kwetu kwa sababu uhitaji wa mbolea na matumizi ya mbolea kwa Njombe na mikoa mingine ya nyanda za juu kusini ni mkubwa sana. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto hasa kuhudumia wateja wote ikiwa na maana wakulima. Kwa hiyo tulikuwa tukipita kwenye taasisi za kifedha kama benki kwa ajili ya kutaka mikopo na kadhalika, lakini kidogo imekuwa changamoto kwa sababu mikopo benki inahitaji dhamana, lakini pia gharama, interest kwenye mikopo, riba ni kubwa. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto sasa kuwa na uwezo mkubwa wa kupata hizi mbolea na kuwapatia wakulima. Kwa hiyo kidogo hali ilikuwa iko ngumu, lakini baada ya kuja kwa mradi huu hasa tuseme tumenufaika sana. Tumenufaika kwa sababu sasa yale makampuni ambayo yanasambaza mbolea yameendelea kutuamini zaidi na kuendelea kutupa mzigo zaidi ambao na sisi unatusaidia sasa kufikisha hizi mbolea kwa wakulima kwa kiasi ambacho wanakihitaji. Mimi kama manager wa kampuni ya Mtewele General Traders nilipata nafasi ya kuiwakilisha kampuni kwenye mafunzo ya usimamizi wa biashara. Niseme yalikuwa mafunzo ambayo yametusaidia sana kwa sababu pale tulijifunza namna mbalimbali ya usimamizi wa biashara, utunzaji wa kumbukumbu, pamoja na utunzaji wa taarifa mbalimbali zinazohusiana na biashara zetu, ni namna gani tunaweza kutengeneza faida na vitu kama hivyo. Kwa hiyo niseme ni mafunzo ambayo yalikuwa ni mazuri sana na yamesaidia pakubwa sana kwenye kampuni yetu. Na labda nishauri kwamba mafunzo ya namna ile yawe endelevu, yawe yanafanyika mara kwa mara kwa sababu wafanyabiashara wanabadilika, kampuni za agrodealers wanabadilika, wafanyakazi kwenye makampuni wanabadilika. Kwa hiyo kuwe na kama refreshers training ambazo zitasaidia zaidi kwa hawa agrodealers kufanya biashara zao vizuri zaidi.
Is it okay?
Rapid population growth, climate change-induced flooding and drought, and COVID-19 related lockdowns are setting back our goal to feed Africa. Yet, in Ghana's northern region, an agricultural technologies program is defying these challenges.
If it was just for my efforts and capacity, I would have still maintained on my small-scale farming.
Jamila and other farmers collectively increased their plantable land by more than 9,000% in just 3 years. Ghana's success is part of the African Development Bank's technology.
Habari za saa, jiji letu,
hapa na pale.
Habari saa 2 na saa 5 usiku. Habari hizo zote unazipata mubashara kupitia Facebook
@ITV Tanzania
na YouTube
ITV Tanzania.
Zote ni kiganjani mwako, kompyuta na kompyuta mpakato. ITV daima, super brand Afrika Mashariki.
Pendwa kwenye kisimbuzi cha Zuku kupitia chaneli zifuatazo: ITV 065, EATV 066, Capital TV 067, Radio 1 987, East Africa Radio 988, Capital Radio 989.
Tukio ya wiki, kipindi kilichosheheni matukio makubwa yaliyojiri kwenye taarifa za habari zilizorushwa wiki nzima kupitia kituo chako pendwa cha ITV Super Brand Afrika Mashariki. Ni kila Jumapili saa 12:30 jioni, usipange kukikosa.
Habari za kila aina kupitia chaneli yetu ya YouTube ITV Tanzania. Cha kufanya, ingia YouTube, halafu tafuta chaneli yetu ITV Tanzania. Usisahau kubonyeza subscribe ili uweze kuunganishwa nasi kwa taarifa zetu zote.
Kila mtazamaji ikifika saa 2 kamili usiku huweka kisimbuzi chake kwenye channel ya ITV. Kiti hiki nilichokalia ndicho humaliza kiu yako kwa kufahamu kila kilichojiri nchini katika habari za siasa, uchumi na biashara, michezo na burudani. Wawakilishi wetu walio nje ya mipaka ya Tanzania hawalali usiku na mchana kuhakikisha kila kinachotokea nchi za Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda na DRC kinakufikia haraka kikiwa kimefanywa utafiti wa kina. Taarifa ya habari na ITV kila Jumatatu mpaka Jumapili saa 2 kamili usiku, usikose.
ITV daima, Super Brand Afrika Mashariki.
Habari za saa,
jiji letu, hapa na pale.
Habari saa 2 na saa 5 usiku. Habari hizo zote unazipata mubashara kupitia Facebook
@ITV Tanzania
na YouTube
ITV Tanzania.
Zote ni kiganjani mwako, kompyuta na kompyuta mpakato.
ITV daima, Super Brand Afrika Mashariki.
Hao ni waandishi wa ITV waliotapakaa ndani ya mipaka ya Tanzania.
Hili ni moja ya shamba la mikorosho ambalo ni zao kuu la kiuchumi kwa wananchi wa mkoa wa Mtwara. Pia ni zao linalopatia taifa pesa za kigeni. Kinachofanyika hapa ni upuliziaji wa viuatilifu vya kuua wadudu wa korosho pindi maua yanapochipuka. Nikiripoti kutoka kwenye shamba hili la mikorosho kwenye kijiji cha Mayanga, kata Mayanga, halmashauri ya wilaya Mtwara, mkoani Mtwara, ni Modestus Mwambe, ITV.
Nyuma yangu ni ziwa Ngosi, likiwa ni ziwa la pili kwa ukubwa litokanalo na mlipuko wa volkano barani Afrika. Lakini upekee wake ziwa hili likiwa na muonekano wa ramani ya Afrika. Nikiripoti kutoka ziwa Ngosi mkoani Mbeya, mimi ni Emmanuel Lengwa wa ITV.
Hapa ndipo kitovu cha uchumi wa mkoa wa Geita. Biashara zote za madini ya dhahabu zinafanyika humu. Nikiripoti kutoka mkoani Geita, Basil Elias, ITV.
Kumbuka, taarifa zote zinazoruka ITV katika habari za saa, jiji letu na hapa na pale hazilipiwi, ni bure.
ITV daima, Super Brand Afrika Mashariki.
Vilabu 18 vyenye lengo moja, zaidi ya mechi 300 katika msimu mmoja, na msisimko wa mojawapo ya ligi kubwa zaidi za kandanda duniani. ITV kwa ushirikiano na DW wanakuletea cheche zote za ligi kuu ya Ujerumani, Bundesliga. Tutakupa matokeo na takwimu ili uweze kuifuatilia ligi hii na kuishabikia timu yako. Kila Jumatatu saa 3:50 usiku katika Bundesliga na DW.